to our dad on the Cressman podcast.
With me on the podcast today, Mr. Mark Wills. Mark is probably one of the most underrated stars from the very talented crop of artists that rose out of the late 90s and early 2000s. And if you'd have told the 20-year-old version of me that I would be doing a podcast with Mark Wills one day, it would have blown my mind. So really happy to have you on. I'm a big fan of your music, and congratulations on the recent tour announced too. It looks like we're getting back on the road.
Jim, I'll tell you what, man, it has been it's been a great mid part of 2021. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. It was if you followed us during COVID and during 2020 and all that sort of stuff, we had the Live from the Bunker, which you're basically in the bunker right here. Just kind of shifted everything around a little bit, but I loved the ability to sort of interact with people through the web. It made 2020. It kept our sanity a little bit, and what I mean by that is, musicians are not. We are not mentally stable creatures that are able to be hemmed up in a room or put in our house and say, okay, you can't travel. You're not going to travel for 15 months. That's just not the way, that's not the way our lives work.
Well, and I think too, to be fair, like there's a level of conditioning. You get used to a certain amount of adulation and admiration and respect and this interaction with your fans that just obviously is the fuel that keeps you moving forward. And then when that all gets taken away, it's not just the travel and the fact that you're cooped up for the first time in 30 years. It's the fact that you're not servicing that component of your personality that that really matters to you and probably helps keep you on the rails mentally a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very fair assessment. I think for all of us, we love to go entertain people. We love to sing. We love to play music. We love that one-on-one interaction. And and don't get me wrong, I will be the first to tell you how much I loved spending that year and a half with my wife and with my oldest daughter, who ended up getting married at the end of November, 1st of December. Loved spending that with her. Loved having my youngest daughter's senior year to just be there, because so much of what we do is get on the bus on Wednesday or Thursday and get home on Monday. And of course, the family's life has started, back into their normal world. And then all of a sudden we interrupted. So yeah, it was nice to be at home, but I'm beyond grateful to be back out on the road and get to go play music.
Good on you, man. So let's go back in time a little bit. You're signed with Mercury back in 1995, 1996. They put the big push behind you. Was that about right?
Yeah, we signed in 95, early 95, because, I had been a demo singer in Nashville. I had sang demos, so I had already found several of the songs that were going to be on the self-titled album that was released in March of 96. Yeah, I had already done all that. So 95, 96, that's the jumping off point. That's where everything really got started for me professionally.
Right. And Jacob's Ladder crushed it, went top 10. I think it peaked at number 6. High, Low, and In Between broke the top 40, but it didn't quite do what you guys had in terms of expectations. And then your best charting single from that record was Places I've Never Been, which was a really powerful ballad. How much did that affect the decision of the label as it pertained to your sophomore record, which was very ballad heavy with hits, right? Was that sort of like, hey, listen, we've got something here. We've got the attention of radio when we pursue this particular sound. Do you feel like that was conscious, or was it just like you were out looking for the best songs and just a bunch of them happened to be ballads off that second record?
That's what I always did. I never put the emphasis on my career on me. Okay. And we were talking before we all got started about the whole underrated,
Yeah.
upper echelon or all that kind of stuff. For me, I always wanted to be a singer. I always wanted to be the musician that basically, for lack of a better way to say it, I wanted to be the soundtrack to people's lives. I wasn't worried about the self promotion aspect of the music industry. I wanted to be the Waylon Jennings or the Merle Haggard or one of those guys that just put out hit after hit after hit after hit and let the accolades sort of flow through the music to me. That's kind of what I always wanted to do. So when Jacob's Ladder was released, and depending on which chart you looked at, there was in that day and age there was the Gavin chart, the Billboard chart, the R&R chart. There was multiple different charts. It was a top 5 record. Places I've Never Been was a top 5 record. We always just wanted to put out the best song. We in the beginning of my career, it was more about putting out a great up-tempo song and then finding a great ballad. I always wanted to have a flow through the record, or a flow through the live show of the ballads, the up-tempos, the fun songs, the serious songs, and and then that kind of bit me in the butt because I found a whole lot of great ballads.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little bit like in Hollywood when when actors get typecast, right? It's like,
Oh yeah,
Adam Sandler is actually a pretty good actor, but unless he does a
yeah,
comedy, it doesn't break through and become a monster hit. And I feel like in the early days with you, you sort of fell into that trap a little bit unconsciously, especially with radio. It was like until 19 something came along, which obviously was a massive hit, 6 weeks at #1. It was like radio kind of seemed to have you a bit pigeonholed in this. Unless it's a ballad, we're not going to take it all the way to the end.
I don't know that it was radio because radio doesn't pick the singles. I think it was the record company. I think record companies are.
But don't you think
I
record
think
companies
record.
sort of lean into where they have the most success or where they anticipate the most success at radio?
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. Record companies, at least back in my day or when I was first getting started, they look for the path of least resistance. And when an artist could put a song out and they, and the public would buy it, or the radio programmers loved it, or or they felt like it was a great song, it was less about the artistic side of what we were doing and more about, well, this is going to be a big hit. This is going to sell records. And that's where I kind of feel like today's market is better for the artist because it doesn't revolve around how many units a week Walmart or Target sells. It's about being able to put a complete package together, a truly show the personality, truly show who they want to, their perception of themselves is, and get that out there. We didn't have social media. We didn't have Facebook. This stuff right here was like space age.
Yeah.
For what we were thinking about doing in 1996, 1997, 1998. I mean, if I was going to visit a radio station, I either had to call that radio station or go to that radio station. There was no setting behind a green screen or sitting in the bunker and having the microphone in front of my face and being able to perform, a live stream for radio. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there are detriments and benefits to this new era,
Absolutely.
right? But I really like the fact that there's fewer gatekeepers. That if an artist really
Right.
wants to access the marketplace, they can build a fan base, they can release music through social media, through DSPs, digital streaming platforms, and start to build a
Right.
story and really understand where they're impacting their audience with real measurables, right? It's like
Right.
that's a huge benefit, but there's less of a machine than there used to be behind certain artists. Like it feels like labels are a little less invested at times with artists. Now, I
Well,
think you started to
they
see
are
that.
less invested.
Yes.
They are less invested because now, and let's just use Mercury Records. We'll just use Mercury as the example because that's where I was. Mercury's entire revenue stream for Mark Wills was record sales. you know so now you have, and I don't know about for Luke Bryan, I don't know about for for all of the acts that are out there, but for the majority of the baby acts, these record companies now, they're getting a piece of your touring, a piece of your merchandise, a piece of everything. That it's a 360 deal. They're taking a piece of everything, and there's no physical product. It's all about pushing it out there, social media, pushing it out there, with Spotify or Pandora and all that kind of stuff. And, and yes, it made it a little easier for the artist to put their own stuff out there. But at the same time, you're right. It made it a little more difficult in a lot of different ways that we, possibly didn't even think about.
How do you think your career would have unfolded differently if it had happened in the more modern era with social media and that sort of thing? Do you think it would have been better, worse? Like, how do you think it would have affected the Mark Wills in 1996 if you were a brand new artist coming out today?
I think for me, one of the things that we deal with a lot, and we've seen this for the last 20 years. People come to our show and they know Don't Laugh at Me. They know I Do. They know Wish You Were Here. They know the ballads, right? And they come to the show and they go, I'll paraphrase, "Oh my God, you're so much fun at your show. You have a great time. You're entertaining. You're funny. You're sarcastic. You have a good time." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's who I've been since 1996. This wasn't something that I didn't decide one day to just be funny. I've always been a smartass. I've
And maybe if social
always
media was around at that time, people would have gotten more of a glimpse into your, that
yes,
authentic alignment in your personality with humor and sarcasm and everything else, right? Where
right.
all they were seeing was whatever they were getting from the label at the time.
All they would ever see, and I wish I had some of the pictures, but all you would see was this stoic
Yeah.
Mark Wills picture of a shadowed face, and we would see places I've never been, and that video is a very dark, reflective piece, and then you would go in from that to "I Do Cherish You," and that was a big wedding song, and then from there it was "Wish You Were Here," and that was or "Don't Laugh at Me," and then "Wish," and you had all those songs, and people just they made this assumption that I was a really depressed dude that just loved to sing these sad songs. And don't get me wrong, all of these songs that we brought to the table, all of these songs that we put out to radio, I never one time said, "No, I don't want to have another number one hit. I don't want to do that. I want to get," that didn't happen until much later. And that was sort of the end of my career at Mercury, because I had reached the point of being like, "Look, man, we've got to give more of a true depiction as to who I am for people, because people are coming out to the shows and they're having a great time and they're saying, 'Man, why don't you ever release this song, or why don't you release this song?'" And it's and the argument is, well, but would that song have been a number one? Would this is a number one? Would that song have been a number one? And so it was just a constant battle. I truly believe that people, if they had known who I was, if they had known my sense of humor, if they would have known all that kind of stuff, they would have probably viewed our live show and viewed us differently.
Yeah, they would have had a more well-rounded sense of who you actually are, and
Absolutely.
I think that's important. But those ballads were, valuable too. They really created a lot of demand for you in the marketplace, I would imagine, for live shows. Um,
Yeah.
you had a great run. I would imagine as well that songs like, Don't Laugh at Me and Wish You Were Here, you probably got really positive fan feedback when you were at your shows about how those songs particularly impacted people.
Still do. That's something that's been a huge deal for us from the very beginning. Like I said, I always wanted to be the guy that put out great songs. The focus was never, you know, how do I say this without sounding egotistical, or how do I say this without sounding like sounding negative? I didn't want the focus to be me. I wanted the focus to be the music. I wanted the focus to be the you know all about the music side of it, because I felt like so often back in those days you had Country Weekly, you had the different magazine platforms, and it was all about how somebody's butt looked in a pair of jeans, or how cute their dimples were, or how romantic, all that kind of stuff. For me, I wanted to be the dude that sang great songs. And I think as my career hits this 25-year uh, level, I think the people that have come to the show, they know. And the people that are discovering us, maybe for the first time, they're grasping it too. They're like, "Hey, this guy's a lot of fun. We have a great time at these shows." I mean, it's less about, it's less about him. It's more about just putting great songs out there. And I'll stand on that. I'll die on that hill any day, because I think at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about the body of work that you put out. It's about, about always thinking of the fan and trying to make sure that the experience or the songs that you're giving them, they relate to. Again, it's the soundtrack to their lives. And that's what keeps you relevant, whether you're at radio or not.
Yeah, I love what you said there about letting the music speak for itself, building that out, rather than working so much on building out the artist brand, because as important as that is, it all dials back to the music and how it makes people
Yeah.
feel and whether or not you can change their state with your songs, right? And you were able to do that very effectively. Now, how long did you grind on the road and clubs and that sort of thing before you got signed by Mercury? Were you out for a few years, or what did it look like back in the early days?
The early days for me was, I mean, as soon as I got out of high school, actually, when I was still in high school, I think I was in 10th grade, and there was a local bar down the street from my house that was offering $100, first prize if you won the talent contest. And so I sang at a place down in Georgia. I sang down in like Jonesboro, Georgia. I sang down there. I sang up at North Atlanta. I sang all over the place, just kind of in the area for several years, and just really sort of got the bug more and more and more. I mean, you go in and sing. I'd always just sing with tapes, yeah, as like a karaoke singer. You bring your cassette tape, you put it in and cue it up, and you're good to go. And that's what I'd done. And then when I sang with a band for the first couple of times, I really loved that interaction. I loved the live feel of performing. And then, I was offered a scholarship to go to college and sing for a college. But the first year that I would have went, the guy that I would have been replacing, he was a senior at college, and so I wouldn't have been able to sing that year. So I sort of decided, I was like, well, maybe I should, sing around here and just sort of build up my chops, get a little better at the live performance side of it, and never went to college.
So
Never,
would you say that
never.
that sounds like a crossroads moment for you? That's like fork
It
in the
was
road, right? Like, okay, I'm going to take
absolutely.
this seriously. I'm going to chase this down. What was the scholarship for, by the way?
It was for singing. It was.
Okay,
It was. I was going to school to be part of a to be part of a group that would travel around and promote the university.
right.
And it was like a 4 part harmony group, singing like barbershop music. And I love that kind of music. I love the Beach Boys. I love those harmonies. And so it was right up my alley as to what I wanted to do. And then, I started singing in a country bar, and one thing led to another. And let me back up. When I started singing at the Buckboard, which was the place that I actually signed my record deal out of, every Thursday, at least 2 to 3 Thursdays a month, there was a national act coming through there. So, back in the early '90s, I mean, Gene Watson, who was on fire with great traditional country music. I got to open for Billy Ray Cyrus. The Weak Achy Breaky Heart was number 1. I got to perform with,
Johnny Lee would he
McBride
have
and
been through there? Was
who?
Johnny Lee? Did he go
Oh
through at that
yeah,
point in time?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Johnny
yeah.
Lee. I got to be in close proximity to all of these brand new acts, and some of the more established acts that would be coming through that knew the buckboard and knew what kind of fan base it had. And if you had a Friday show in Jacksonville, Florida, why would you not come through on Thursday and play the buckboard and put the gas money for the bus in your pocket? I mean, it was that kind of place. So that for me was a big eye opening experience to the business side of it, to the performance side of it, and I fell in love with it.
That's always the interesting component of the conversation for me is like, at what point did
Yeah,
you decide this is going to be it? So you have all this success with Mercury. You're crushing it. Wish You Were Here. The album goes platinum. You put out Permanently. That goes gold. Loving Every Minute does very well. Obviously, you did the greatest hits package with 19 something, 6 weeks at #1. I mean, at that time, you had some inconsistency, but overarching, you were quite successful at radio and
yeah.
probably a darling at the label. At what point did you feel things were cooling? And do you feel that when that happened, it was initiated more by radio, or was it the fact that your team wasn't working it as hard as they were in the beginning?
I never felt like I was cooling it at the record label. I always felt like I was very much a team member. And what I mean by a team member is I tried to never make a decision based on what I wanted as much as I did, this was the record label promotion department, and this was the record selling department, and this was our tour and all that. And I always looked at it as, the promotion department may ask me to do them a favor today, but they're going to do me a favor tomorrow. So it was always teamwork. Um, we we released. We were in the studio working on "Crowd Goes Wild" or that album, and
Great album,
some
by
of the
the way.
guys
I
from the
love the cover of the Ronnie Millsap song with him featured on it, "Prisoner of the Highway."
yes,
Tremendous,
yeah.
man. So well done.
Well,
Anyway,
that was my favorite. That was like the one thing that I was like, okay, we've got to do this. But we started working on that album, and some of the guys from the record label came over, and they were like, "Dude, this is so cool. You know, can we get like a scratch tape of this just to let everybody sort of see what you're working on?" I was like, "Yeah, man." So we do like a board mix and give it to them, and the next thing you know, they're they're promoting it to radio as being the first single off the new album. And for lack of a more politically correct way to say it, it was just like, what the hell are y'all doing? You've heard you've heard one song. You've not even heard the finished product of that one song. Uh, you know, they got really excited about it. We let them sort of rush it. They released it. It did nothing.
What
And that's
explanation did
sort of,
they give you for jumping the gun? Like, what did they say in defense of that?
you know, if you go back and you look at that time frame at um, the record label wasn't really being successful with any artist. It wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't me. It wasn't the other artists. They weren't really being successful at being able to make anything a hit at that time. And not to throw anybody under the bus, but I think they were just grasping at something that was different. They had Shania Twain, they had Terry Clark, they had Sammy Kershaw, they had a new Billy Currington coming out. They had several different acts, but they were trying to be they were trying to push for something new, and so when they jumped the gun at that, I basically said, after that wasn't a success, I kind of said, stop. This is my career. If you continue to put out music that doesn't work, you keep your job, I lose mine. And I sort of said, we're not going to play this game anymore. We're not going to make knee jerk reactions. We're going to finish the record. We're going to come in and like play it for everybody. And that's when they decided that they didn't need me anymore. And so I stepped away from it, bitter and feeling like I had, given my entire career. There was a statement made early on in my career, and that statement was, you work for us until you have a platinum record. And then once you go platinum, we work for you. And it never turned out that way. And I never looked at it as me being the boss. I looked at it as, your job, and your job, and your job. I know my job. I know what I sing well. I know what I can take and sell as the product. Let me do my job. I'll bring it to you. I'll hand it to you. And then you listen to it and you say, hey, we feel like this right here will be great. A true story about 19 something. The record label didn't even want to release 19 something as a single. It was it was on a greatest hits package. There were two new songs on there, and because we had just an overwhelming amount of success with our ballads, when I brought 19 something to the table, they didn't even want to talk about it. It was like, no, 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 this is it. Not that it was like too tchotchke, but they're like, that's not gonna that won't fly for you. And so I um I literally took the song to uh the radio station in Atlanta, and at that time, WKHX Kicks 1015, they were like the second or third largest radio station in the country, listener wise. And the program director was a friend of mine. And I said, look, I know this is stupid, and I know that you could get in trouble, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to just have me on the station, and I want you to play one of the songs off the new record. And he's like, well, yeah, we could do that. And guess what? You know, maybe the R&R chart, maybe the Billboard chart has it for 6 weeks. It was 7 weeks on the Billboard, on the R&R chart. It fell out of number one only because the second space shuttle disaster happened, and the very next week it went back to the number one position. So it was almost validation for me that I knew what I was talking about. I'd never played the card of I know better than you know. Never played that, but it was kind of like I was tired of always beating my head against the wall, trying to get an up-tempo song out there. Went in and recorded this song, and then they still were like, "No, no, 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 not gonna be a hit for you." And I was like, "Watch this," you
That's a
know.
bold move,
My
man. That's a
well,
bold move.
it might have been a bold move, but at the same time, I felt like it was the only position that I had.
I
You
think you
know,
had to do
it's
it. I mean, the song went
right.
number one, what, 6 weeks? I mean, like, and then it went back. Like, it's the biggest single of your career if you just judge it on pure singles and chart numbers, right? And where it sat for as long
It
as it
was the
did.
number one played song of the year,
Yes,
and the number two played song for the entire decade.
that's right. So you were right. Now, here's the question. When you were right, and you knew you were right, was there a temptation to rub it in a little bit? And do you think it actually made the label? Do you think it pissed them off to some degree and made them take a step back? Or do you feel like the opposite happened and they went, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe we should listen to him a bit more.
No, I think what happened there was it embarrassed a lot of people. I think, and it probably embarrassed them privately because there's video footage of the number one party for 19 something and the promotion team talking about how they believed in this song from the very beginning and blah blah blah. And you probably saw me standing over in the corner rolling my eyes going, "You're a lying bastard," because but at the same time I was still very much a team player. I might have been aggravated with the position that I was in, but at the same time I still wanted it to be a team effort. I still wanted those guys, those people that we had worked so hard with. I wanted their support. I wanted them to back me like they were backing this artist or like they were backing this artist. I still wanted it to be, something where if at the end of the day, I'm having a number one, you're having a number one too. Because I can't make it do your job and I can't make it do this person's job. It's a teamwork. It's teamwork. And so I think it did. I think it was I think it was a point of contention, maybe embarrassment for some of them. And I think that was something that probably in the long run bit me in the butt because I was nobody knows my audience better than I know my audience, and nobody at the record label could tell me what was going to work better because I'm the one that brought those songs in. It was me and my production team. We were the ones that found those songs. We were the ones that cut those songs. We were the ones that brought them into the record label. And,
Had you sampled
you
any of
know,
them live at all up to that point? Like, had you played any of them live just to get a feel from the audience? Because sometimes artists do
no,
that.
I don't like to do that. And the reason, I've always believed that the side of performing or whatever, you may hear something live and it may strike you one way live, but when you hear the record, it may touch a totally different spot in your heart. And again, when it's I Do Cherish You, when it's Don't Laugh at Me, when it's Wish You, when it's all those great ballads, I knew how those were going to set with people. I mean, it wasn't the biggest question I ever got out of any of those was, how did he send the postcard if he was dead? I don't know. I didn't write the song. I just thought it was a great story. I thought it was a great message, and I recorded the song. So,
It is a great message and it is a great song. One of the interesting things that happened on the last record is the song What Hurts the Most, which
Yeah.
obviously I heard that first with you on that record, and it was like, what a great song, what a great ballad. And then eventually became a hit for Rascal Flatts. But there must have been a desire, I would imagine, by yourself or the label to release that at some point. Was there, or was there a plan at all for that?
Um, I There's a part of my mind that tells me that after they dropped me from the record label, they had said something about releasing another song. And um, I could be wrong about that. We could have been discussing it before they released me. But at that point, it was like, I'm not going to do anything to make anything a success for you. If we're not going to work together, I am certainly not going to go to work for your benefit.
Yeah, the
Um,
relationship sounds like it kind of ran its course. Like you were just done, you needed a break, and it sounded like they felt the same way.
well, Jim, I can say it like this: you have to sort of step back and understand that I've got two little girls at home. I'm spending 200 days, 200 plus days on the road playing shows and doing radio shows and going here. There was never a time in my life where I had one guy from the record label that went everywhere with me. There were 10 or 12 or 15 guys that got to split it up and go one day here, one day there, one day over here. I was the one that was having to go and do everything. And you know, I can honest to God say the one positive thing in my world at that time were my two daughters. And I never got to spend any time with them. My wife and I, we had our oldest daughter in 1998. And when she was born, they traveled with me on the road. They traveled with me a lot. And that was probably the most happy and content time in my career because I would I would go to work and I would come back to the bus and here's my baby and here's my wife. And then, night 2003 rolls around, 2002, end of 2002, beginning of 2003, I have a brand new daughter, that's born. And my oldest daughter is getting ready to start kindergarten. And they're still pushing me out here to do all this other stuff. And again, even back then, we didn't have the technology to do this like we're doing here. If you and I were doing a face to face, I was sitting right there with you, or you were sitting right here with me, or we were both sitting somewhere where we met up. That was a tough time. And I'm not gonna go on. I'm not gonna say that everything was all their fault. I'm certainly not gonna say everything was all my fault. I mean, I think we both shared our own pieces of the disillusion that they probably had with me and that I probably had with them. But I will tell you that I truly believe and I truly feel like I was very much a team player to the very end. And I'll stick beside that because you know I had I got dropped from Mercury Records, you know, several weeks ago, and I was still fulfilling my obligations to radio stations. I was going and doing acoustic shows that I told them I would do. That at the point where the tie was severed with Mercury Records, I could have went flag. I'm not doing any of this crap anymore. I'm going to the house, and I didn't. So that's just where I'm at with it.
Well, it speaks to your character and your commitment to the people at radio who you'd probably built relationships with yourself. How hard did you and the rest of your team pursue another major label deal after that unfolded? Was it something that you guys pursued and chased hard, or was it like, I want to take a break and weigh my options?
I wanted to take a break and be a daddy. I wanted to still do I wanted to still do my 100 shows a year, my 80 shows a year, but I didn't want to. But I didn't want to have to. I didn't want to be on the road performing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, going other places to do other things to then have to meet up with the band again. I wanted a little bit of time, and we did. I mean, we did another record deal. We did a couple of other things throughout that time, but I just never put the emphasis on um, being gone as much. And now, and I kind of think, I look back on it now, and I'm a couple years older than Luke Bryan. I'm several years younger than Chesney and several years younger than McGraw. And I'm like, okay, those guys are still doing it at a big level. I kind of feel like I wanna get back out there and give it one more shot at the big time side of it. I can tour the rest of my life off the songs,
And you've
but I
aged
but I
very
would.
well as well. Like you still sound great. You look great. Like you haven't you haven't slid off the rails in any of those aspects, right? Like this,
Well, I
the
I
voice is
still
still there.
I sing better now than I did then. You know, I've had people come to the shows and they say, man, you sound just as good now as you did when you were recording when you recorded Don't Laugh at Me or whatever. And honestly, in my opinion, and that's one thing that I'm uh, very much a stickler for. I will not tour. I will not be on the road doing what I do if I can't do it at the level that is the same or exceeds the level when I recorded it. If I get to the point where I can't do that, if I get to the point where, and look, let me step back. Everybody has bad nights. I've sat at the house now for 16 months, and you go out on stage and you're like, sometimes it just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work exactly like you want it to. But all in all, I feel like I'm still there. If I ever reach that point where I'm not still there, then it's time to do something else.
Yeah. Well, good on you, man, because a lot of people don't maintain that integrity as they age in the system. Or, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes they're working to make money. They've got a lot of people relying and depending on them, and they're in a spot where they haven't put their money away over the years. You see it in professional sports all the time too, right? Like some guys just
Yeah,
hang in there, especially fighters, right? They just hang in there a little too long because there's one more payday. And
right.
you do see that pattern sometimes in music as well. So you've just launched a tour. What is happening on the music front with you these days? Are you releasing stuff independently? Are you recording? Like, where are you at creatively?
We did a new record right at the end of 2019. We had recorded a new album. We were ready to get that out there. We thought first quarter, second quarter of 2020 was going to be a great time. Boy, were we wrong. So we have set on this album. We're actively now. It's kind of weird because we're almost in July, and the record companies are just now starting to come back into the office. They're just now sort of getting their feet up under them. And we've talked to some people about it, and and basically what I'm actively pursuing right now is trying to find the right partner to release this music with. Um, you know, I'm not gonna, and this is where the ego comes in. I'm not gonna sit here for 2 years waiting on somebody to release something that they're still in the process of trying to develop. I don't want to do that. I want to find somebody that says, "What, Mark Wills has had a whole bunch of hits," and listens to the project and says, "There's some hits on this as well. Let's get this out there." That's sort of where we're at with it right now. So, we're optimistic. We're keeping our fingers crossed, and we're doing our due diligence that we can get this music out there, that people can, that we'll find a partner for it, and very soon, whether you're here in the States or in Canada, or wherever you consume your music from, if it's a digital platform or whatever, that you'll be able to hear some new Mark Wills music in the very, very near future.
Right on. Excited to hear that. Now let's talk a little bit about the rest of your team. Are you self-managed these days? You got a manager, agent? Like, where's that all at?
No, we have our booking agent. I have my management team that's still in Nashville. We still kind of keep it splayed out there. I have thought seriously about doing some different things, but I don't live in Nashville, and that's always been one of the main problems for me throughout my career, is that level of connection. If this whole street right here is the music business, and you're not on this street, it's easy to get forgotten. It's easy to get left beside. It's easy for people to say, well, we've got these 15 people that can do it. What do we want to have him come all the way in from Atlanta to try to do it? So, I've tried to keep my connection there, and of course, being a Grand Ole Opry member sort of helps with that. Different things like that. But we keep our management team there. We keep our booking agency there, and then it allows me sort of that little bit of opportunity to go home and sort of disconnect from everything.
Who's the agent these days, or the agency?
Bob Kincaid is actually my booking agency. He was great. Done a great job. It's sort of a smaller boutique company. They have a few acts that they work very hard for, as opposed to some of the big agencies that always just wait for the phone to ring in. Bob and them are proactive. They go after, they actively market to, some of these folks, and get us some shows that might not be presented to us. And then of course, we do a lot of the fairs and festivals. Those are our bread and butter. I mean, we love those. I love playing the big sheds. I love playing the big, 15, 17, 20, 50,000 people, but it's harder. To me, those are harder to connect. I love playing those shows where you're looking right in people's face, and you're able, because that, to me, that's what the ballads do.
Clubs
Those
and
ballads
theaters
really
and
connect them.
ballrooms, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that we're seeing analytics more available from DSPs, from digital streaming platforms, are there any surprises for you on how well you're doing these days in international markets? Have you taken a look at that? Because that's one thing that is sort of coming to light for a lot of stars who were focused on things domestically for a long time, which I think you were, probably because you had a young family. It didn't make sense to go to Europe or Australia that
Right.
much, right? But now that you're starting to access analytics, is there any spot on the planet that you're like, holy shit, I didn't know I had a big following in Ireland or Russia or?
I never have. I I have a team for that,
Yeah.
and I I don't. I'm not good at it. Believe it or not, I've never played Europe. I've never played. I've never been to Australia. I always, we have done some stuff. Well, I take that back. We played in Italy. We played some things over there a couple times. We've definitely been to Canada. We've always maintained pretty much right here in the U.S. Um, I have no problem going anywhere that there are country music fans, and that there are fans that want to hear our music, because I feel like, you know, I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna tell you, like, it blows my mind that Elvis Presley never played outside the United States. You know, um, to me, he was the biggest act in the world. So I never really set my goal to be worldwide. I wanted it to be someplace where I could touch it almost on a daily basis. And that always felt like, for me, right here in the US, was that stomping ground. But as we see those numbers generate higher and higher in other places around the world, it's a matter of time before we try to tap into that market and see how well it goes for us.
I'm sure it's tempting, especially now that your girls are grown up, and you've got a little bit more freedom on that front to go out and maybe go to Europe for a week or two or Australia for a week or two. So,
Yeah.
man, I am thrilled to talk to you. Congratulations on your
Thank you.
legacy and everything you're working on here for the future. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck, my friend.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. And anytime we're in your area or anytime you're close to where we are, come out and hang out with us.
Deal.
All right.